Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome back to the program. Good to have you with us. We are almost to the day, 10 years from the beginning of the occupation and invasion of Iraq, also known as the Iraq War. Now, you'll remember very shortly after, March 20th, 2003, George W. Bush stood on an aircraft carrier under a mission accomplished banner and essentially declared victory, indicating that combat operations, major combat operations, had ended. Of course, an overwhelming number of both civilian and American troop deaths happened after that point, after mission accomplished, after major operations had ended. And of course, we can go back and say, well, in the long term, even though we were misled, apparently more and more deliberately, about the existence of weapons of mass destruction, which did not exist. We were misled about the connection between Iraq and Saddam Hussein and the terrorist acts of 9/11. Maybe it was still worth it. Maybe it was still worth it because we did topple Saddam, and long term, we reduced the violence in that country. And today we got news that a suicide bomb has killed 57 people in Iraq. Actually, 57, some estimates say as high as 65 people. And it was the deadliest day in Iraq since September 9th, when insurgents unleashed an onslaught of bombings and shootings across the country, and that left close to 100 people dead. And the symbolism here, I can't ignore the symbolism, which is that it really makes us wonder, well, what is different in Iraq now? Yes, Saddam Hussein is gone. Saddam Hussein was a bad guy. All else being equal, most people would prefer Saddam Hussein not be in power. But the question of, was it worth the trillions of dollars and counting? By some estimates, 2. By other estimates, George W. Bush hid up to several other trillions of dollars in costs in different ways. Was it worth the thousands of U.S. lives and at least tens of thousands of civilian lives? Some people say that actually that it goes into 6 figures, although those are not, those numbers are in question, but close to it, if not over 6 figures. Was it worth it? Most people believe the answer is no. A majority of Americans believe the answer is no to that. And of course, a majority of individuals in most countries believe it was not worth it. Majority of Republicans still does think, not by a huge majority, but they still do believe it was worth going into Iraq in the first place. What's the best reason, Lewis, for your opinion? In other words, what's the strongest argument that makes you decide it was or it was not worth it?
Hard to say in the long term. I mean, there is certainly the selfish reason of, protecting oil, right? I don't know what the long-term effects of that are really going to be on our country.
Well, the cheap oil we were promised never happened. So that was BS.
Well, I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, 10 years from now, if we're paying the same price for oil, if this war had not happened, maybe we'd be paying double.
Yeah, but that just, I understand what you're saying. You're playing devil's advocate. But Natan, we know statistically that the access to oil from going into Iraq is not something that is influencing prices. And by the way, 10 years from now, we'd better be close to being off of the stuff. Or we're going to be in a seriously disturbing place, Natan.
Yeah, the thing is that when we say that the country might be better off than it would have been if we hadn't gone in, assuming that's even true, there are plenty of places in the world where, for humanitarian reasons, it would make sense to get rid of their dictators and engage in nation building. But that's not what this was. If that was what this had been, then you probably would have seen an international, United Nations-backed plan by all of Europe and Canada to do this in a sort of international way. That's not what this was. This was framed as self-defense, and that was total BS. It had no basis in fact. And as a matter of fact, that's the reason that our government gave for going in. It wasn't for the humanitarian reason.
Ultimately, I think this was a terrible decision. There's no way it was worth the money we put into it, the lives we lost, and now the instability there as a result of the war.
And I hope, my hope now is that this is remembered when thinking about potential future military engagements, although history suggests, going back now to Vietnam and to a number of other decisions that were made, that we don't necessarily learn from our military mistakes.
Not at all.